Okay, so when you think of Martin Luther, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's that dramatic image, right? The bold rebel, hammer in hand, nailing his 95 theses to a church door, all righteous fury. It's the movie version. But what if that image, as powerful as it is, completely misses the real story? Because the fuse that actually lit one of the biggest explosions in Western history, well, it wasn't some grand public act of defiance. No, it was something quiet, private, and honestly, terrifying. It was a crisis of faith happening entirely inside the mind of one single tormented monk.
So yeah, the popular story you see here, it's all about righteous anger over the corrupt sale of indulgences. And look, that was definitely part of it, for sure. But the real story, the actual spark, was so much deeper. It was an internal, agonizing, theological crisis. It all boiled down to one obsessive question that tormented Luther. How could someone like him, a sinner, ever hope to be saved?
So to really get the Reformation, we have to go inside Luther's head. We have to understand his inner turmoil, the soul in total anguish.
You know, a lot of this came from his training in a philosophy called Ockhamism, and it basically hit him with two, well, just crushing ideas. First, that God's power is so absolute, so total, that he can seem completely arbitrary, almost like a tyrant who just makes up the rules as he goes. And second, Ockhamism suggested that humans should be strong enough on their own to follow God's law. For a guy like Luther, this combination was an absolute recipe for terror. So what was the result of all that? Well, Luther didn't see God as some loving father. Not at all. He saw an angry, terrifying judge, a judge with impossibly high standards and whose final verdict felt totally unpredictable. He was being told he should be able to meet these standards, but he felt deep in his bones that he just couldn't. It was an impossible trap. And you can hear this torment in his own words. He said, "The more devout I was, the more I had to approach the altar full of doubts." And it just got worse from there. Think about that. Every time he tried to do the right thing, go to confession, be devout, it just filled him with more anxiety. He was stuck in this vicious spiritual cycle, always feeling like he could never, ever be good enough.
This really was a relentless cycle of despair for him. We're talking deep, deep anguish over whether he'd be saved. He was completely obsessed with the idea of God's judgment, and he pushed himself to these extreme acts of penance. I mean, there are stories of him sleeping out on the snow in the middle of winter, but none of it worked. Nothing brought him any peace. And then it happened. While he was up in his study in the monastery tower, deep in scripture, everything changed. He had what's now called the Tower Breakthrough. This incredible moment of insight that for him felt like paradise itself opening up. And here's the key that unlocked it all. It was a single line from the Bible, from Romans 1:17. "The just shall live by faith." That's it. Suddenly it all clicked. It wasn't about what he did. It wasn't about his works or his penance. It was about what he believed. Now you have to imagine, for a man who had been living in this private hell of fear and doubt, this wasn't just some abstract theological idea. This was everything. He literally called it the very door to paradise. Think about that. Suddenly, a word he used to hate, the justice of God, became the sweetest thing he'd ever heard. And this single idea became the absolute core of Protestantism, justification by faith alone. So what does that mean? It means salvation isn't something you earn, it's not a wage you work for. It's a free gift. You don't stop being a sinner, but through your faith, God essentially covers you with Christ's perfect righteousness. It all depends on God's grace, not on how hard you try. I mean, the shift in thinking here is just massive. You can see it here. Before, he was stuck in this logic of law. Imagine trying to climb an endless ladder to please an angry God you can never reach. It's exhausting, it's hopeless. But after, he found a logic of love. Salvation wasn't a climb anymore. It was a gift, freely given by a merciful Father. It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. Okay, so he has this massive, life-changing, personal breakthrough. But an idea this big, this liberating, well, it wasn't going to stay private for long. And when this new way of thinking collided head-on with the church's practices, like selling indulgences, well, that's when his inner crisis exploded into an outer revolution. And just look at how fast things escalated. It's kind of breathtaking. In 1517, he posts the 95 Theses. Just 3 years later, by 1520, he's publishing these incredibly radical books that just completely break with the church. And by 1521, it's over. He's officially excommunicated after he publicly burns the Pope's order against him. It went from a debate to an all-out war in just 4 years. Unbelievable.
And why did it happen so fast? Because his central idea, justification by faith, had these massive radical implications. I mean, think about it. If salvation is a free gift received through faith, what does that mean for the whole structure of the church? Suddenly, Luther's saying there's no real difference between a priest and a regular person. He's challenging the Pope's authority to interpret the Bible. He's attacking centuries of tradition. He wasn't just tweaking things. He was trying to rebuild Christianity from the ground up, all based on that one breakthrough.
And this all brings us to the incredible legacy of this one man's personal struggle. How an idea born in anguish literally changed the world. You have to understand, for Luther, this wasn't just one doctrine among many. He called it the article on which the church stands or falls. For him, it was everything. It was the absolute, non-negotiable center of the Christian faith. There was just no room for compromise. And so we come full circle. The Protestant Reformation, this huge historical event, it wasn't just about politics or money or corruption. At its very heart, it was a revolution that started in the mind of a single monk, a revolution born from his private anguish and, finally, his incredible relief as he wrestled with the biggest questions there are.
It really leaves you with a pretty staggering question, doesn't it? How much can one person's inner world, their private fears, their personal discoveries, really reshape the entire outer world?